Provisioning systems in ecological economics, they have been emerging as a concept that helps us understand the relationships between levels of resource use and meeting people's essential needs. And these relationships are crucial to understand in the 21st century because we urgently need to meet everybody's needs at a radically lower level of resource use that respects planetary boundaries. So to dive deeper into this, I led a study that explores what provisioning systems are and how can we understand the ways in which they generate different social outcomes at a given level of resource use, especially including how to transform them to move societies towards an ecologically safe and socially just future. So let's dive in. First, what are provisioning systems? Here, we use systems thinking to propose a definition that contains the three core types of things in all systems. We have a purpose, we have elements, and we have the relationships between those elements. And if we put these things together to imagine the systems linking resource use and human needs, we proposed a definition that in general terms could be stated as a set of related elements that work together in the transformation of resources to satisfy a foreseen human need. Now that's a mouthful, so if we think of an example, the purpose of a food provisioning system, it ought to be to satisfy a given society's need for food. But to do so, we can think of a set of related food provisioning elements. Of course, there are farmers, there will be irrigation systems, roads, distributors, vehicles, supermarkets, households. But at the same time, of course, there are also banks, there are regulators, there are investors, advertisers, there's the local culture of what people eat, there's lifestyles. All of these elements, they come together, working together to transform the gifts from nature, which is land, soil, plants and animals, fossil fuels, water, sunlight, into the food that people need to eat. And we can imagine mapping similar provisioning systems to other human needs like energy, housing, education, or mobility. So that gives an idea of what provisioning systems are, but the second part of imagining how they could be transformed was more complex. And here to guide our thinking, we did an assessment of 6 established theories with origins from across the natural and social sciences. Now, I won't go into details of this assessment, but there are links provided and I learned so much in the process. Just to name them here, we included the complex adaptive systems and the social ecological systems framework, which both have roots in ecology and in common property resource management. We included the theories of practice and the multi-level perspective, which both have origins in sociology and the sustainability transitions literature. And we included the social provisioning perspective and the systems of provision approach, which have origins in heterodox economics and political economy. And all of these theories recognize that systems are complex, they are uncertain, and they have histories, they're path-dependent. And we drew on insights from each of them in order to deepen our understanding of how provisioning systems could be transformed. Now, the analytic framework that includes provisioning systems was originally created by my brilliant colleagues Julia Steinberger, Dan O'Neill, and William Lamb around 2015, at a time when all of us were connected with the Living Well Within Limits project at the University of Leeds. And this framework, in turn, draws on Herman Daly's ends-means spectrum, which shows the fundamental dependence of social outcomes on healthy ecosystems and the resources that they provide. So here, provisioning systems are seen as mediating the relationships between resource use and social outcomes via physical and social systems that link the production, distribution, and consumption of the goods and services through which human needs are satisfied. Now, this framework had influenced me a lot, and it's what got me wondering about whether we could say more on how provisioning systems mediate these relationships. And so if we fast forward to the findings of our study, we proposed 3 main changes to the original framework, drawing on those 6 theories that I mentioned. So first, we suggested that each human need can be mapped one-to-one to a corresponding provisioning system. So the relationships between resource use and human needs within a given society are mediated by a set of overlapping provisioning systems with shared elements that each satisfy a foreseen human need. So we can imagine that example of the food provisioning system being overlapping with a water provisioning system, as well as a sanitation provisioning system through the plumbing and the piping and the infrastructure that we need for water supplies. Second, we argued that an explicit focus on rent extraction is needed, and we introduced the concept of appropriating systems to make this visible, because the strength and legitimacy of these systems of appropriation and rent extraction deserves special attention, because these systems maintain powerful actors who are entrenched in the status quo. And it's crucial to better understand this interplay between provisioning for all and accumulation by a few in order to understand obstacles to transformative action. So third and finally, we identified 6 broad interconnected provisioning elements that all contribute in different ways to production and distribution in the provisioning process. So these included 2 technological elements, such as techniques and material stocks, and 4 institutional elements, which were about households, markets, the commons, and the state. And these elements, we imagine, they're related to one another. They're interconnected with feedback relationships and power relations, which are running both ways, both within and between them. So there you have it, provisioning systems. In terms of modeling and applications, this is a framework that is seeing increasing attention, including recently in the United Nations Global Resources Outlook report, and it is also embedded in some major post-growth research projects here in Europe, which are all exploring how to provide a good life for all within planetary boundaries. So I hope this has been a useful introduction to provisioning systems. There's lots more information in the links, and I hope you enjoy. Happy learning!